Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 2nd of September of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And today we're going to start from an unusual region for the recent days. We're going to start with the Kupiansk and Liman front lines. Today we got some geolocations from this area and more details and clarifications regarding the situation. First of all, and probably the most important update is that the Russians are trying currently involve and to redeploy their newly created 25th army in direction of Kupiansk area. Maybe you know, maybe not, but there was or used to be 41st army, and currently the Russian authorities took a decision, military authorities took a decision to redeploy the 41st army in direction of Zaporozhye and to replace their parts with the 25th Army. At least this information, this piece of information was confirmed by the Ukrainian intelligence service, by the head of Ukrainian intelligence and special forces, Budanov, this person, and also by the Institute of Study of War. So very interesting situation. The question is why the Russians took a decision to redeploy one of the most experienced and powerful army from Kupiansk direction and to bypass almost the entire territory of Ukraine of the combat line and to send them to the Kupiansk, to the Zaporozhye area. We will discuss this in the final part of this video. I'll give you my opinion regarding this situation. Now we got few details and few geolocations regarding the current situation in this area. First of all, we got one interesting video how the Ukrainians were trying to move along the forest lines. They probably was making some kind of reconnaissance operation, but at some point the Russians discovered that armored vehicle and destroyed that armored vehicle with artillery strike or maybe with some anti-tank weapon or something like this. We're using this video because we are not receiving a lot of updates, and currently it's very difficult to understand the Russian positions, the Ukrainian positions in this area. And at least these geolocated videos that we got just today confirms that probably this territory is under Russian control, or at least under complete fire control or under control of Russian reconnaissance teams. So that's mean that as a result of fierce clashes and a storming operation, assault operation that the Russians were implementing since the beginning of August, they managed to capture this territory and to get to this line. At least they have control, fire control over this territory. Furthermore, we got today another video from the Ukrainian sources, the Battle of Combat, how the Russian forces, the Russian stormtroopers were trying to clear the trenches, and they were very successful, and as a result of that operation, the Ukrainians were forced to step back, the Ukrainian soldiers who managed to survive, of course. So basically, we can say that these two geolocations confirm the combat line in this area. For now, we don't have any geolocations from this side, from this small corner, and probably and high likely that this area is under Ukraine control. Anyway, we're going to follow, because we got the period of time has started when we start receiving more and more updates from this area, which means that the Russians did have some progress and they're going to continue their offensive operation. But the information regarding the changing of armies, like that this area will be under control of 25th army that was just newly created, and they're not very experienced, also can tell us that the Russians are not going to continue offensive operation, and they will try to hold their positions and to try probably to repel the Ukrainians' counterattacks on this bridgehead, because the Ukrainians have also accumulated significant forces in this area. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes on the Kupiansk and Liman front lines, the Ukrainians lost around 100 soldiers and 9 armored vehicles. Also, very interesting updates are coming from Novoyegorovka, from this area. If you remember, during the August, the Russians published a lot of videos, a lot of details regarding the clashes in this area. They managed to cross Zhiribets River in the vicinity of Karmazinovka, Kovalyovka. Also, we got some reports that the Russians captured Sergeyevka, Nadia. A lot of Russian Telegram military experts and sources on the ground also reported that the Russians managed to penetrate the defense belt and enter Novoyegorovka. But later we got some geolocations from the Ukrainian side, and what we have today. Today we got at least 3 important geolocations. The first one is this one. On this video, we can see the forces of Ukrainian tank brigade, and the Ukrainian tank, probably T-72, was attacking the Russian positions in this forest line. A little bit later, we're going to see the forest, so we can recognize this forest on the map. And the Ukrainians were attacking this area. So basically, the Ukrainian tank was in this area and he was attacking in this direction, which confirms that as a result of fierce clashes in this area, the Russians did establish control or develop their positions, at least in this direction. I can't tell you about the forest that located, about this forest with this one. We haven't received any geolocated confirmations regarding this forest, but at least these fields are under Russian control. Furthermore, we got another video from the Ukrainian sources how 2 Russian tanks tried to get to their positions and tried to attack the Ukrainians in the vicinity of Novoyegorovka. The Ukrainians tracked and discovered the Russian tanks, and after that, the Ukrainians made a number of drone strikes against the tanks, and 2 tanks were destroyed. The Ukrainians, as a result of those drone strikes, destroyed at least 1 T-90 and 1 T-72 tanks that belonged to the Russians. But the main value of those videos is that those strikes took place along this line. So basically, the Russians were trying, as I understand, to get on this position, and from this position to using the tank carousel tactic to attack and to try to suppress the Ukrainian positions in the settlement by the name of Novoyegorovka. So they got there, but those tanks were destroyed, and that allowed the Ukrainians to bring their tank as close as possible and to attack the Russians in the forest that located on the southeast of Novoyegorovka. So basically, the Battle of Novoyegorovka has started or continue, who knows, but anyway, this situation at least give us some updates and some understanding of the situation on this foothold. Now we're moving further to the Bakhmut area. Today we also got a lot of updates from this territory. The first and the most important, that Ukrainians probably are going to launch a very significant offensive operation one more time in this direction. And the main thing that, the main proof of that is that they have already launched a series of strikes against the Russian armored vehicles, tanks, artillery positions, ammo depots. Usually the Ukrainians start using their drones and artillery massively just before another wave of attack, because if you remember, there was like a small operational pause during the previous 2 days, and the reason of that is that Ukrainians tried to accumulate and to save their armored vehicles, their drones, their artillery, and not to waste them for free or for nothing. They currently try to accumulate as much as possible, and when time comes, they start attacking and bombing the Russians. And today there was another attempt to from the Ukrainian side to attack in direction of the railways that located between Andreevka and Kurdyumovka. The Ukrainians was trying to develop this foothold one more time to the south and to the north, but that attack was repelled by the Russians, and basically the Russians used their artillery systems for those purposes. We had some geolocated video how the Ukrainian armored vehicle was trying to maneuver in this area, to go from one part to another, who was trying to attack or probably support the Ukrainian infantry somewhere in the same area. But the Russians saw everything. They tracked the armored vehicle, and after a few minutes they started bombing and shelling this carrier, and as a result of counter-artillery duels, that armored vehicle was destroyed. When talking about the northern flank in this area, as I understand, the Ukrainians also are planning to start or to restart offensive operation in direction of Yagidne and Berkhovka, because during the previous days they managed to maintain the gap and to maintain the gray zone by sending significant number of infantry inside of the gray zone, trying to capture the empty trenches to create a foothold and to prepare the passage for the next armored fist attack. The Russians, of course, saw everything again. They discovered the Ukrainian movements, they tracked the Ukrainian movements, and at some point, as soon as the Ukrainians stretched their orders, the Russians started bombing them with drones, and significant number of infantry died were wounded along these railways in direction of Yagidne and Berkhovka. Anyway, I believe that some forces managed to survive and to prepare the fields and the road before the next armored fist attack in this direction. So probably within the next few hours they're going to be something. The Russians continue bombing and shelling the hill to 205.7 with all types of weapons they have. Currently, for example, the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes in this area, the Russians managed to improve their positions along the combat line without any geolocations of photos or pictures of that improvement. But we understand that the Russians need to return control over this hill, because without this hill, it's going to be very difficult to continue defense of Klishevka, and anyway, sooner or later they will be forced to step back, because there is also a lot of risk to lose Andreevka, and if the Ukrainian Russians lose both these settlements, the Ukrainians can penetrate the defense belt and to advance very further, very deep inside of the Russian positions. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes on the Donetsk front line, the Ukrainians lost 250 soldiers. As usual, the level of losses is very heavy, but not so heavy in comparison with the previous days. When talking about South Donetsk area, we haven't received almost nothing from this bridgehead. Just Russians continue bombing with using FPV drones the Ukrainian positions in Urozhaina and Staromayorskaya. And the only interesting video we got from this territory is the FPV drone attack against the Ukrainian positions that was located on the south of Ugledar. And the value of this video is that, according to the most of the mappers and geolocations we had previously, this area was at least months ago or two under Russian control, but because of the fact that the Russians were attacking this area and the infantry using drone, that means that somehow the Ukrainians during the previous months managed to return control over this part of Ugledar foothold or something like so. The northern part of Pavlovka was returned under Ukrainian control. Now we are moving to Zaporozhye area, and today we got also a lot of interesting details and updates, and one of the most important, as we discussed, that the Russians took a decision to redeploy their 41st Army in this direction, and they're not going to take anybody from this area, let's say, to send to Kupiansk. No, they're not going to do this. They're going just to send the entire army in this direction with one purpose: to slow down and to stop the Ukrainians and not to allow them to penetrate the Russians' defense belt. What does it mean? First of all, that means that the situation is very serious. I'm not saying that the situation is critical for the Russians, but to redeploy entire army probably means something. It's not just the games. And furthermore, don't forget, and we have already discussed this video in the morning, that in the previous video, that Ukrainians published the video of a significant number of Ukrainian tanks, Leopards, and probably Challengers also somewhere there between them, right these days, right today, probably before the possible Ukrainian offensive operation in this direction. But this video is very important. But more important update that we got from the Russian side, as we discussed that during the previous 24 hours, somehow the Ukrainians managed to land their infantry in the southern part of Robotyne. According to the text messages, there were no geolocated confirmations, and the Ukrainians started their offensive operation in the direction of these forest lines. And that attack was repelled, and most of the Ukrainian soldiers were captured or killed. And the Russian sources on the ground reported that while they were searching and making investigation, they managed to found like a military order in one of the officers who died during that operation. And according to this military order that belonged to the Ukrainian officer, the Ukrainians are no longer currently the Ukrainians have an order to kill every single Russian soldier if they are able to capture anyone. So this is the order that Ukrainian officer received in the battle in the vicinity of Robotyne. And this is, I'm not saying that this is speculation or fake, but as I understand, this order we received at the same time when the Ukrainians published the video of tanks, at the same time when we got the piece of news that the Russians are going to redeploy another army in this direction. And as I understand, the main purpose of this information, of this piece of information, is not to show that Ukrainians are very bad, that they're killing, and the purpose is to force the Russian infantry on the ground on this territory to fight till the last blood and not to surrender, not to give up, not to run away. This is the main purpose. And what does it mean? That means that the Ukrainians are planning to launch their final offensive operation. And not just offensive operation, the Ukrainians are planning to launch a tank breakthrough. One detail that we need to discuss, and you need to understand this well. We have these geolocations, we have these yellow-red clouds to understand the positions, but if we increase the number of updates, let's say since the beginning of the 20s, we see that the farthest position of Ukrainian, where Ukrainian were discovered and were tracked by the Russians, is this geolocated video. As you can see, this is very far to the south. That video was made by Babry drone squad, and as a result of strike of another like FPV drone, another Ukrainian soldiers were attacked or killed. But as you can see on this video, we see smokes very far, like to the south from this area. So one more time, we have geolocated the southern part, the southern geolocation is this one. So basically, according to the video we got, the Ukrainians managed to get at least this line. But as I understand, and my opinion, that during the previous weeks of clashes, the Ukrainians managed, at least the Ukrainians reconnaissance team, commandos, scouts, and so on, managed to get deeper. And probably the main purpose, of course, of that is to prepare for the Ukrainian tank army, for the Ukrainian tank armored fist, to prepare the safe roads, to demine fields, to check the safe roads, to understand and to find the Russian positions, and so on. And as soon as the Ukrainians are able to do this, the main Ukrainian armored fist will start its movement from Novodanilovka, and the main goal and the main direction is to attack Acherituvata, this settlement, with the penetration. The Ukrainians are not going to capture settlements one by one. They need to make a tank penetration, to tank breakthrough, and to get as deep as possible in direction of this settlement. Of course, there are going to be a lot of attacks, like this is the primary direction. There are going to be, of course, secondary attack to the south of Verbova. There are going to be another secondary direction in the vicinity of Novoprokopovka and Ilichevskого Solotka-Balka. They're going to be obviously attack in direction of Romanovska, but the main goal and the main purpose is to get as fast as possible into this settlement, because if the Ukrainians are able to get Acherituvata, they're going to have a strict and clear road in direction of Tokmak. And probably this is the Ukrainian goals, and this is exactly what they're going to do. One more time, to penetrate the defense belt with tanks. First of all, they are currently trying to clear this territory with infantry, to find secure roads, to demine fields, to understand what roads to use for the next tank attack. After that, they will launch Leopards and Challengers to the south, and as soon as they get to Cheritovatam, one part of army will stay there, and the second part of the army probably will continue movements in direction of Tokmak. And basically, the Ukrainians will try to repeat their success in Kharkiv area. They penetrated at one place, and after that, the Russians, under the risk of being encircled, started retreating and stepping back. At least the facts and the events that took place today tell us that this is exactly what the Ukrainians are planning to do. They don't have time to take every single settlement. They have time just for one very risky but one attack, and this is exactly what they're going to do right now. At least the facts are telling us about this. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this area during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians lost another 115 armored vehicles, soldiers, 6 armored vehicles and 5 artillery systems. If you ask my opinion whether the Ukrainians are able to do this or not, I believe they are not able to do this. But the piece of news regarding the redeployment of entire army tells me from another side, that the situation is very risky, the situation is very serious, and the Russians do understand that there are maybe very small, but chance that Ukrainians are able to do this. And currently, very fast, they're trying to redeploy the entire army. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.